and say, welcome to week 15. Oh my gosh, only 2 lectures left. Wow, just let that soak in. Let that soak in for a minute, right? 2 lectures is not that many, right? No, no. So again, be thinking cognizant of the end of the semester. Again, I try to set you up for success by scheduling the way I do, so take advantage of that and we'll work accordingly. I now have, to this date, 3 students have now completed everything except the final. It's pretty impressive, right? And even if you didn't, you're still impressive, so just hanging out there. All right, so today's topic, I don't have any class topics for today. I'll have some next week. So in your notes, put databases. Such a hugely important topic, one that I think many people do not realize until they start thinking about it, how much it touches their everyday lives. But here's just a Wikipedia definition, right? So a database is an organized collection of data. An organized collection of data. And that word organized, I want you to write down, because we're going to talk about what that means today. Because imagine if you're wanting to track, and really it's about data, keeping track of data in an organized way. Most people, when they have data that they're looking at, they immediately jump into Excel, okay? But Excel is great for many reasons, but for large amounts of data that you want to have structured, Excel is not good. Because anyone can name any field, anything they want, they can put anything in it, and with the database you have restrictions on the way you can put data in, because that way you think about how you want data out. How many of you have heard the term garbage in, garbage out? Right, so garbage in, garbage out, put it in your notes, garbage in. Actually, we use sometimes the acronym GET-GO, which is garbage in, GI, garbage out. Right? So if you don't put good information in, you won't get good information out. So think about, and this definition is kind of interesting because it touches on the things that you're learning, which is tables, queries. So tables are really an entity. We'll talk about an entity today. So a table, we think about that as a large collection of one particular type of data. Queries, questions of the database. Reports is huge, right? So oftentimes when you're dealing with a database, somebody wants you to run a report. And I'll talk about the different jobs related to databases in a minute. And then views, right, and then other objects. But this last sentence, the data is typically organized in a model aspects of reality that supports processing information. So really what that means is, in this example, let's say I wanted to keep track of hotel rooms. One important aspect would be, how many vacancies do I have? So I'd want to make sure I set up the data so that I could get out the information that I need. Okay? So the big key here, and underline it twice, is called organized. Okay, it has to be organized. You have to think about the data that you're going to place in the database structure. You can't just willy-nilly and Excel is great because you don't have to really think about it. You can just go in there and start entering data. But with the database, this is not true. Okay? So I want to show you too, because I captured this today, some of the most popular database engines out today. So the number one is from Oracle, and Oracle is a huge company that creates databases for huge organizations. So when you are somebody, let's say the size of a Walmart, right? You need to have a huge database. Can you imagine the database that Walmart would have? Think about that for a minute. Every product in every Walmart has to be reported to in a centralized location for them to know what their inventories are. Like when you think about this, next time you go into Walmart, you buy a product, let's just say, although I don't promote it, a Snickers bar, okay? You buy a Snickers bar, this is true, within 10 minutes, Walmart can tell you the inventory of their Snicker bars across the entire country. So that's a huge advantage for them. This is part of the reason Walmart is who they are, is because they manage their inventory to the point that they are very cost efficient. And without a database, there's no way they could do this. By the way, Walmart also tracks the weather. Why do you think Walmart would track the weather? Why big company like Walmart, what would you care about the weather? Shipping, right? That'd be one very important part. But there's another aspect. Does weather affect what people buy? Absolutely, right? So seasons is one thing. But let's say this, Walmart actually knows when there's a storm coming in that there's a major uptake in one item that's consistent almost across every aspect of their business. Any guess what that one item might be? What is it? Umbrellas. You would think so, right? What else? I've heard water, right? Flashlights. These all make sense, but not true. Guess what the one item consistently uptake in a storm is? Pop-Tarts. Now, why? Because people are like, I want food that lasts a long time. I want it to be durable. I can throw it in the water and it still is okay. I don't know, whatever it is. So back to this, is that the Oracle is something in that magnitude. MySQL is actually an open source database. Microsoft SQL is just another database. MongoDB, which is a funny name, right, is actually an open source. And in this case, it's a different kind of database. So we're going to talk about today, and notice your access that you are all learning is on here. Number 7, it's really still very relevant today, right, in the business place, but it's a what kind of model here? It's a relational database. So in your notes, relationships. This is the way we organize data, is we give it the relationships, the tables the entities have to each other. So today, during lecture, I'm going to go over a design. You are going to, as part of this lecture, create a design of some data that you might want to track. Okay? So just keep this in mind as we go through this. So again, access is still relevant. I actually was a little surprised when I pulled this up. I didn't think access would be on the top 10, and it is. So you are learning something that is still relevant to the market. Microsoft Access, still irrelevant. Which, by the way, can you get for free? How many of you know you can get it for free? Where can you get it for free? I've said it before. DreamSpark, right? So it doesn't come out of your campus email, just FYI, okay? All right, so there's the database. We already kind of talked about examples, but let's talk about a few more. Anytime your information, you give information, or anytime you do a lot of activities, your information is stored in a database, okay? Do you think that campus has a database? Oh yeah, we know every class you've taken, we know every instructor you've taken, we know every grade you have, right? How about the DMV? What are they keeping track of? Everything, right? Every ticket you, no, okay. Well, yes they do, actually. Don't they keep track of every ticket you've had? Yeah, they do, right? They also keep track of every car you've registered. They keep track of every time you're licensed. I mean, they keep track. So none of this stuff would be possible to track without a database, okay? Every time you go to the web, whenever you search Google, you're not actually searching the web, you're searching Google's database of the web. So this concept of a database is really one, until you start really thinking about it, you don't realize how ubiquitous. How many know this term ubiquitous? It means it's what do you think, Sarah? What's the definition of ubiquitous? Yeah, it's just everywhere, and sometimes we don't even think about it anymore, okay? All right, so what are we gonna, I want to give you an example. Oh, wow, my transition stopped right there. How many of you have a Fresno County Library card? Anybody in here? Nice. If you do, there's a couple of huge benefits. One, I'm going to show you here. There's a website I use called Lynda. I want you to put that in your notes. Lynda.com, Lynda.com, lynda.com. It's one of the best training websites on the web today, the most professional content that's available for you to learn a variety of skills. Normally, check this out, $25 a month. You get it free with a Fresno County Library card. Right, I mean, this is just getting Lynda alone is worth getting a library card, okay? So I use this when I want to learn something new. I come in here, I go into like JavaScript, right? So if I wanted to search for what they have for JavaScript, I can look at all the courses that they have around JavaScript. And there's quite a few. And not only are there's quite a few of them, there's also really professional content, right? If somebody lays out something really well, it's so much easier to learn it, okay? So, but here's the other thing, and this is what I want you to put in your notes. In addition, here's the Fresno County Library. You have this thing called Research It. And Research It gives you all kinds of databases that you have access to, and one of them really, really helpful, and it's called the Consumer and the Lifestyle databases. Imagine you wanted to start a business in Fresno, right? What's some of the things you would need to know about starting a business? Yeah, demand for the product, your location, right? The laws around it, all those things are accessible via some of these databases, but the one where you try to find customers are so easy. Matter of fact, almost scarily easy how you can do this. I'm going to show you. I'm going to go to customers. I'm going to go to advanced search. And by the way, there's you're going to see how I can as soon as it comes back. There we go. I can do this. I can say I want to look at lifestyles. And let's say my business I was thinking of doing was a health, right? Health and fitness. So I actually have options under health and fitness. I could say just general health. How about that? Now here's a really nice feature. I can go to maps and I can open a map and I can tell it based on my selection, which I don't know if you saw and you may not have. There's 30 million records in the database that I'm about to look at. 30 million. So what I can do is just draw an area, or I can do what's called a define a radius. So I'm going to actually drill down into California, which would make sense, wouldn't it? Although I could search other places. I'm starting a business in California. I could define a radius, and I could go, matter of fact, I'm going to drill down a little more so I can see Fresno. And I'm going to click on Fresno. I'm going to do my radius again. I'm going to click on Fresno. I'm going to click on Fresno. Oh, what happened? Did it just zoom too quickly? I went out into the ocean somewhere. Oh wow, I did go out in the ocean somewhere. Really, really. I guess the clicking was just too much for it and it couldn't get all my clicks. So I guess the point of this is to slow down and do this a little slower. So let's try this again. I'm going to click define radius. I'm going to click on Fresno. Well, let me try this one because this one worked yesterday for me, but let's do this. Let's say I click here. I love it when things work. Do you love it when things work? Oh, there it goes. There it goes. So let's say I want to define a radius that, well, let's try here. Drag. There it goes. Whew. I was worried there for a minute. Right? So what I did here is I defined a radius and I could make it, the wider the radius, the more people it's going to encompass, right? And I can just say done, or I can say print. But what it's going to do here is it's going to run a query. And now it's already restricted those 30 million to 100,000 records. So I could actually now at this point, based on my criteria, is see all the people within my query. Impressive? Pretty impressive, actually. Pretty impressive and almost kind of scary because look at this. Their numbers are in here, right? So if I wanted to just call somebody up and call Ginger up and go, hey, Ginger, are you into health and fitness? Now, the question is, how did they get on this list? They probably bought a magazine or something like that. But it also, interestingly enough, how many of you know about the do not call list? Do you know about that? Yeah, so if you get called by telemarketers, you can tell them, please put me on the do not call list, and they are not supposed to call you again. So if this is frustrating for you, I just want you to know you can try that. But it's very interesting to see how much data we have access to via, and I want you to put this in your notes, the reference USA, right? So what I did is I took and I queried against about 3 million records. I found based on my criteria about how many? 100,000. Right? And now I have a list of all those people. Now, one thing that makes it kind of hard is I can't necessarily download them all in one swoop. I can only do so many at a time, but still, with a little bit of effort, I could easily create a mailing list to do that. All right, so this is what? This is Fresno County Library. So these are databases, and you all, how many of you have been through our library and been through our database search, right? So if you haven't, definitely go and check it out because there's a huge amount of them out there. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about, in addition to the Fresno County Library, is just some of the jobs. So in your notes, put jobs related to databases. Now I'm going to give you a breakdown of 3 jobs today. Most common jobs, although trust me, there are many others. This is one of those things, and here's how I try to frame this discussion. Employers are going to expect you to have Word and Excel. They're just going to expect that. They're going to be happy if you have any kind of database experience. okay? So database experience can, again, distinguish you from other people, and you're only getting a taste of it in this class with the My IT lab and the lab test that you're doing. So it's only a small exposure that you're getting, and there's other classes that you can take just focused on databases. So the first job is really the one you're learning, which is really how to deal with the application. The application you're learning is Access, and knowing how to write a query, knowing how to write a report, knowing how to create a nice looking presentation. This is the kind of stuff, and how to sort things, right? How to find just how specific criteria, how to write payment. But that payment function next week is a very interesting one in chapter 3 in Excel or Access. You're going to see that one again in the lab test, so pay special note. And as a side note, let me tell you this. YouTube is your friend. Like, how many of you, when you're stuck in something, go to YouTube immediately? How many of you just, yeah, if you don't, you should be using YouTube as your how to learn stuff, okay? So check this out. Access, payment. If you do that, you're going to find a nice little 3-minute video that explains how to do payment function in Access. And you're going to need to do that for the lab test. And this little short 3-minute video, and it's even on 2013, will show you how to do it, okay? So in your notes, I want you to put that. When you go to do the lab test, one of the hardest steps you're going to have is how to determine what the payment is for a particular house. And this does it. It really helps you. A little side note there, but still relevant, because when you're learning something, I turn to YouTube all the time. So the first, and this is the lowest level of payment, but it at least can distinguish you, is knowing how to use users of databases. Number 2, so make sure you put a user of a database is what you're learning with the My IT lab. The second level, step up from knowledge and pay here, is a database administrator. This person has business knowledge, they have security understanding of data, and they have troubleshooting. So this is somebody that they come into a business, and maybe the business already has a database implemented for their customer, or for their ordering, or for something. They come in and maintain it for them or help them troubleshoot it. Because trust me, there's not a business that I know of today of any size that's not using a database to track something. It's just not possible, okay? That's why this is such an important skill to have. So first one is user, second one is a database administrator, and the one that's the most valued is the database developer. The person that can come in and create and maintain and optimize business critical data. This is a really valuable, high-paying job. As a matter of fact, I looked at some statistics before this, and in Fresno, you can make somewhere up to $70,000, $80,000 a year as a database developer. Now, I'm not saying that's entry level. You need to be in it for a while. You need to be good at it. But there are definitely jobs related to this, because businesses need this kind of expertise. Okay? And this is a job I've had. This is a job I was hired to do by various companies to come in and create databases for them. So what I'm about to show you is the beginning level of what a database developer would do. Okay? And you're going to do this at a high level for some information you want to track. So the 3 levels is user, administrator, and developer. Okay? Highest paid is the which one? Developer. Okay. So let's do this. There we go. You're going to create a simple database design. You're not going to have to create it in Access. Access. Did I really just say Access? I did. Access and Excel sometimes in my head get flipped. I don't know why. So what I'm going to show you first, and I just want to give you a link here, is I'm going to give you a new kind of link. And this link is going to take a template that I've created, and it's going to do what's called a copy. So the link itself is going to do a copy. See this, where you're going to click on it, it's going to create this document, DB Week 16 Classwork, that you will then link this document into your regular classwork. So first, step 1 is get the template itself, okay? But let me actually show you what the template will look like, all right? So here's an example. And this is a very, very, very simplified example. And we're just going to walk through it to help you understand it, okay? Because databases are made up of, and we're going to go through this organization today, so let's go ahead and start talking about it. Databases, in your notes, are made up of tables, okay? Databases at its highest level, it is made up of tables. So let's look at it in the relationship to the database that I'm showing you up here. So this is a very simplified example of a video rental store. Okay, and you'll see what I mean by, and actually just show the screen. Thanks, Sarah, that's great. So we have 3 tables: customers, movies, and rentals. Okay, so the entities, the things I'm tracking, if I have somewhere in there, this is working. Not here, in here, it's working great, okay? So I have 3 entities I'm keeping track of: my customers and my movies, right? This makes sense, customers and movies. But in the center, this is what we call the transaction table, okay? So this table takes a little more understanding, but these kind of make sense. First, databases are made up of tables. We have how many tables here? We have 3. You're going to need to have 3 of these, okay? So we have customers and movies. Let's talk about these 2. So tables are made up of, in your notes, records. Okay, so what we have here is we have 6 records, 6 customers, the example. We have an ID field, and notice how that ID field is in, and this is the other organization we talk about. Databases are made up of tables. Tables are made up of, do you write it down? Records. Records are made up of fields. So in the customer field, we have customer table, we have 2 fields. We have CID and C first. The C is indicative of the first character of the table name. That's just a standard. Some people use different standards. I'm just using an example here, okay? So then we have this number. So he is customer ID. And you all have seen customer IDs in various aspects of your life where you have an ID number, right? Oftentimes that's what's called auto number. Whenever a new customer comes in, the next customer in would be 7. So just, and that just makes sense. So C first is just their first name. Now here's why this is a simplified example. Would we want to know more than just their first name if we were really running a video rental store? Yeah, what else would we want to know? Give them their last name, their address, their phone number, their blood type. She laughs, but it's true. The more, maybe not, but the more we know about customers, the better we can market to them, right? So this is just a simplified example, right? All right, so let's jump over here to movies. So again, we see a similar thing because databases are made up of tables. Tables are made up of records, and records are made up of fields. Very nice. So over here we have a similar thing. MID for the ID of the movie. Movie is the name of the movie. So you can see we have how many movies? We have, and by the way, with 6 movies and 6 customers, we are not making a lot of money. Just going to tell you right now, this is not a profit-making business. That was also a joke if you didn't get. So what else about movies might we want to know? Genre would be a good one. What is another one? Rating, good. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff we might want to know about movies that we're not showing here. We only have 2 fields. There are going to be more, okay? All right, so now let's talk about this relationship. Did you put relational database in your notes? So now let me explain it, okay? Because it is explained by the center table, what we call the transaction table in the center. Because here's the deal. One customer can have many rentals. Think about that, right? One customer can rent many times. One movie can be rented many times. So we have a relationship between the customers to the rentals and a relationship between the movies and the rentals. And this is what I want you to put in your notes. One customer, many rentals. It's a one-to-many relationship. One movie can be rented many times, so it's a one-to-many relationship. And this is the kind of stuff, as you're developing databases, you think about, okay? Because this the center table, the center entity, is really connecting these 2 entities in, and this is the word I want you to make sure you get, transactions. Typically, this is your transaction table. So let's actually walk through it. So in this scenario that we're looking at here, interestingly enough, our rental table has a similar RID for the rental ID that indicates how many rentals we have. And again, we only have 10 rentals. We're not making a lot of money, okay? But what is CID in this example? Yeah, customer ID. So this really says my first rental, right, of the day, let's kind of talk about it that way to help you, is to who? And what did Minnie rent? American Beauty. Okay, let's do the second one. Second transaction of the day was, and he rented sorry, did I mess that up? Oh, no, that's right, Big Fish, right? These are old movies. I've used this example before, okay? Transaction 3 of the day, who was it? Mickey rented Cold Mountain. Now, why in this case, here we have the CID and the MID. Why are we referencing the IDs here in this transaction table instead of actually just listing the actual name of the item that we're talking about? Very nice. If we listed it in both places, we'd have duplication. Okay? That way, by the way, do customers change their addresses? Do customers change their phone numbers? In this structure, in this relational database structure, because of the way it's set up, we only really have to change that record once because of relationships. You with me? Okay, again, I want you to keep thinking about this because you're going to do this. So let's actually do a couple more just puzzle concepts, right? So the first one, who rented Die Hard? Let me see if we can go here. Who rented Die Hard? First we'd have to figure out what? What ID? So Die Hard is 1. So we go down to movie ID and we say it was rented by who? Very good. Tom and John in that order, right? Actually, it's, Tom and John. It was first rented by Tom and then rented by John. And the way we do this is we look at the sequence of when they appeared right after each other, but different people rented it. Okay? So that's how you think about these things. Let's do one more. Let's do, right, who rented American Beauty? Who rented American Beauty? American Beauty is 2. Minnie rented it twice. We're not sure what's up with Minnie. She really liked that movie, right? But it doesn't matter. It's that she rented it twice. Do you see what we got? Because we saw it here, and then we saw it again here. Now, this actually simulates possibly she might have rented it twice, right? She rented it once, she brought it back, she rented it again. That could happen. Database allows you to do that. Okay, so that was what? That was the movie rentals, okay? Again, I want you to think about this because this is the template I want you to fill out. And we're going to do this again, but now we're going to do it with a different topic, okay? But anybody, as I'm doing this, I want you to start thinking about what data you would use in this. And all you have to do is fill this out, but you have to understand the concept to fill it out correctly. In honor of Clovis Rodeo, I'm going to do bull riding, okay? Think about for a minute, what would be the big entities in bull riding we'd want to keep track of? Rider, bulls, and what would be the transaction here? Events could be, right? So again, keep track of this. I'm gonna actually call it, she's along the same lines. So my database is called bull riding, okay? So I'm gonna call it bull riding. And I'm going to not call it riders. I'm going to call it cowboys. Sorry, cowgirls, you can ride too. It's okay. It is a very violent sport, by the way. Really dangerous. Okay, so we have cowboys, and then we have what? Bulls. And in the middle, you could have events, but let's call it rides. Okay, you with me so far? So I've created my 3 tables. I have one cowboy can have many rides. One bull could be ridden many times. So I still have the one-to-many and one-to-many relationship. And I have a transaction table. Okay? So let's actually just fill in, and by now let's do this part. So what's this name of this field for the Cowboys, given my standard I showed you before? CID. And what would be the name of the Cowboy would be C, name. Now let's come over to Bulls. What would be the field name for Bulls? For the ID, BID. And how about this? What would we call this? Because what would be the kind of the fundamental piece of information? Again, it'd be B, name. Because we want to know their name. We could also know their breed. We could also know other things about them. Again, this is a very simplified example. Okay? Now did I put 2 D's in rides? Okay. So here in the rides, what would be the ID field that indicates the transactions? Very nice, RID. Now what are these 2 fields going to represent? Your very nice CID for your Cowboy and BID for your Bull. Okay? So let's actually fill these in, because this is the example that you're going to actually do here, CID, and then BID. Now notice I have 2 additional fields that I have added since the last example, because really, if we were really doing this, we'd want to keep track of more than just the ID fields that connect the relationships. So what might be 2 more pieces of information we'd really want to know about that Cowboy and that Bull in a transaction sense? The time, good. So how would we label that time field? What would it be called? Oh, good. TID would make sense, but actually it would be R, because it's the rides table. Keep that in mind. I like the way you're thinking, though. R, time. Now, what might be another field we want, because our time is way important, because, by the way, do you know how long you have to stay on a bull to get qualified? 8 seconds. There's a movie, 8 seconds, by the way, if you want to watch, FYI. I went to high school with that guy, FYI. Really interesting side note, but whatever. So what's the other really important is score, because you're scored on how well you ride. Not only do you have to stay on that crazy animal, you are scored about how well you do. Okay? So let's just fill in a couple of samples, even though it's Cowboys. Let's say Sarah's there. Okay? Monique, you want to be a bull rider? Okay? Rafi, okay, some of the guys, William, right? So you get the idea, right? I want you to create, right, at least 6 items of sample data in the outer fields. So what might be Bull's name? Betsy. How about full of Bull? Okay. No way. No, right, no way. Somebody yesterday, we were doing this, we called it concussion. Concussion, right? Because you get a concussion when you ride. And then what's another one? Off with you. Okay. So you get the idea. So now let's actually do a couple of transactions, right? So let's say, Monique, you're up first, okay? So what would her ID be? If Monique was up first, what would her CID in the transaction table be? 2. And let's say she rode no way. What's the BID? 3. Let's just make up some time. Let's say she was on for 8 seconds. And let's give her, I think it's scored, I think it's to 100, I'm not sure. Let's say she got 89, awesome. Okay? Let's do one more. So let's do William. So what's William's ID? 3. He rode off with you. 5. He rode for 7 seconds. And he got like 30. And I think you get disqualified if you don't do 8, but I don't know. I'm not officially into bull riding, so can't speak of it, okay? So here's the deal. You fill out 10 of the transaction tables. You fill out 6 minimum on each of the outer tables, and then you fill out the transactions. One additional thing you need to do is come up with 3 questions or queries your database will answer, okay? So in our example, if we kept going, what's some questions we might want to ask? That's right. How many times did she ride? If she only rode once, she'd be in there once. How many times was off with you ridden? Again, if we were really doing this, we would have more information like the date, the rodeo arena, the event. But I hope you get the idea, right? The idea is for you to really put on your thinking cap and understand this thing about databases. Because trust me, the more you understand this, when you're talking to people that do this, the more you'll understand what they're talking about. Because they're going to talk about transaction tables. They're going to talk about relationships between outer and inner, right? A word we use here is called joiner. Okay? All right, so let's just make sure we got that organization right. Databases are made up of, look at your notes. Databases are made up of tables. How many tables do you have to do for the exercise? 3. Very nice. Tables are made up of, very nice. And how many records do I want in the outer tables? 6. And how many transactions? 10. 10 transactions. So databases are made up of tables. Tables are made up of records. Records are made up of what? Fields. When I look at your data, I need to make sure it's consistent with whatever you name the table. And when you fill in your transactions, make sure you reference that outside, making sure whatever you've named it here is in here and here. This is my way of helping you understand that concept. And then make sure you add whatever you add here, you keep consistent with your table name. Okay, let me finish this up. So databases are made up of tables. Tables are made up of records. Records are made up of fields. And the last one I'm going to give you, put it in your notes, fields are just made up of characters. Okay? And the big thing about databases, in addition to everything we've said, is that you can restrict what kind of data goes into a particular field. You can tell it, only enter this kind of data in that field. If you're a cashier, right, these days, do you actually have to enter the UPC codes? No, and the reason you don't is people make mistakes. So that's why we have scanners, right? But it's still entering data into a database. All right, so you're going to take my copy of my template that I've given you. Let me just say this. The one thing about this, do you notice what kind of, this is a little side note, but do you notice what kind of layout this is? And here's what I mean by this. This is called a landscape. We've been doing portrait up till now. So that's why I'm saying you can link to an external file that has this in here, but if you want to copy and paste it into your Classwork doc, you can do that. You just know that it's going to be a little smaller, and I just want to make sure you have all the fields that I've required in all the records. Okay? So you can either link to it as an external doc, or you can figure out how to integrate it into here. Because I found out today, this is why I'm bringing it up, you can't have in a Google Doc a page that's landscape and then a page that's portrait. By the way, this is not true in Word. In Word, do you know this? You can do what's called a section. And in section, you can have one that's landscape and the next one that's portrait. But in Google Docs, you can't do that. Once you change the designation of landscape portrait, it changes it for everything in the document. Which you could absolutely change your Classwork doc to be landscape. It would just give you more writing area. Interesting note. I don't know. I found that out today as I was looking around. I'm like, what? Okay. So hopefully you got that organization down. Hopefully you're going to enjoy this. I'll give you the link that copies the doc. Be sure, by the way, what directory would this doc go into if you were doing an external link or a link? What directory would this go into? Shared with Rio, right? Okay, so our next lecture, week 16, is going to be on a really, 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 really important topic, privacy and security. And boy, is this one getting a lot of press these days. I've been doing it's so talked about today, which I think is good. I think it's good we're starting to realize how important this topic is to all of us. Okay? Otherwise, that's all, folks. Thanks, Sarah. I'm going to drop the recording.